speaker is the amazingly talented, yet humble, ready to rumble, ready to cause some trouble. Mr. Tim Lewis. Let's hear it for Mr. Tim Lewis.
It's probably about 68 or so.
68.
Something like that. That's cool. I can see myself. Very excited.
Yeah.
You look terrific.
No, thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to talk today. Well, I didn't know that I was going to be speaking today, but it came to me that I should talk about what I did early in the pandemic. About a year and a half ago, when things started shutting down and stuff was looking grim and really dark, I got really into reading for some reason, and I started going through science fiction and stuff, like something. I read through all the old Octavia Butlers, which I'd never read, all the old Ursula K. Le Guin stuff. Like I was looking for voices that I hadn't heard before. And I also read some classics. I reread the Dune series by Frank Herbert, which is just still great. It holds up. I hadn't read it since high school. I was a little worried because I was kind of dumb in high school, and I liked it in high school. So I was like, oh no, what if it's terrible now? But it's still really good, really, really, really good, especially the later books. But I'd also read a series called The Cultural Novels by a Scottish writer named Ian M. Banks, who has died in 2006, I think. So there won't be any more, but there's like 10 books in this series. And I want to describe them real briefly and how reading this series completely changed the way I look at so many things. So, briefly, Ian Banks was a Scottish writer. His mom was a psychologist, and his dad was, I want to say, a lieutenant or something in the British Navy. So he grew up kind of with these dual fascinations. How people's minds work, what's important to them, what drives people, and war, basically, military. And he came out of this dichotomy, this dualism, with this incredible amount of optimism, which I really, really liked and really connected with early in the pandemic because, things were looking really bleak, and, politics was terrible, choices were terrible, disease apparently is terrible, And so reading this optimistic series about the culture, that's what the civilization is called, that he came up with, was just so refreshing. So in the culture, he basically imagines it's not humans, first of all. It's some other group, and it's a sprawling over several galaxies civilization, that has reached the point of post-scarcity. So, meaning you have all the food that you could ever need, you have all the energy you'd ever need. Everybody basically has like a tiny, safe reactor, like a nuclear reactor in their house. So you can do all these things. And his big question is like, if we weren't struggling to survive all the time, what would we do? What would humans do? How would we behave? Like, would we get up and work a 9 to 5? Would we go to jobs where our labor is being exploited, perhaps? Like, would we just stop that? Would we just become hedonists? I don't know. But he gets into that a little bit. And basically, each of the novels, they're all completely disconnected, but they're all set within this one civilization. So, and he doesn't tell you when one is happening or another. You can get the sense that like 1,000 years has passed between the first one and maybe the last one or so. But none of the people know each other. Like there's one guy that shows up in a couple of them, maybe, sort of, possibly. But, that was weird. But, just exploring this idea of post-scarcity really got me thinking, and I think we might be almost there. At a point where we've pretty much figured out how to grow food. We're really good at growing food. And we're really good at making cheap electricity these days. We're not so good at getting food to people, like actually transporting it or growing it very locally. It doesn't work so well in climates, especially like this. It's hard to grow stuff in Oregon in the winter, I think, unless it's mushrooms, which are just everywhere. But we've pretty much cracked those those things. We figured out how to pull fertilizer out of the air, which is the craziest thing if you really think about it. Like all of the constrictors that have held humanity in place for thousands of years have basically been removed, I think. And it almost seems like the only real problem at this point is that we don't realize that yet. Like we've evolved to be in competition, to be fighting and killing everyone else in order to succeed. We've evolved to have this zero-sum mindset, where if I'm gonna succeed, that means you're gonna have to not succeed. You know, only certain people get to really excel, and everyone else gets kind of pushed down and exploited a little bit. And so we have this vestige of genetic legacy that we really need to figure out is no longer true. Because if I have all of my needs being met and you have all of your needs being met, that's a sum game. There's no loss there. You know? And I think that that's really the challenge that we're going to be facing over the next 50, 100 years. The next generation, perhaps, maybe the one after that. We're going to have to struggle with this and letting go of our evolved responses to look at things in more of a holistic, doesn't feel like the right word, but I'm going to go with that. You know, something like that. I read something once that was saying that if you and your neighbor are directly competing, you might look over into their country and say like, oh wow, they got a lot of nice cows. I need cows. I'm gonna go over there, invade their country, take their land, and keep their cows because I want cows. You know? And that's a way that works, as long as you're separate, different situations. But if you're like buying and selling from them and you invade them, you've kind of ruined your economy, you know, just by doing that. So the fact that we're so interconnected makes it less beneficial to wage war on other people.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, like if I'm selling stuff to John, I don't want to like kick John's ass, you know, because not that I could, you know. But you know, exactly. But if he's selling me stuff, I want to keep it coming, and if I'm selling stuff to him, I want to keep selling him. So weirdly enough, capitalism reduces the likelihood of war, I think, in my mind, you know, from a recent historical perspective. And I think as we realize that more and more, we'll recognize that we're all in it together, as cheesy as it sounds. You know? And we should just focus on bringing all of us up and recognize that there's no need to fight. And, I mean, John said some things, but you know, I'll let it slide. I'll let it slide this time. So, Toastmasters, welcome to the post-scarcity event.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Great. Outstanding.